Hello, everybody. Hope everybody is having an awesome Thursday. It is Thursday, right? I mean, it's
I
hard
think
to
it's
keep track.
Thursday because there's a football game on tonight. Of course, that could
Ah,
be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday.
that is true. What football game is going on tonight?
NFL Giants Eagles, the worst division in football, but my division.
Okay, all right. So I'm not a very big sports fan, so I kind of feel like left out of some of the conversation. But
It's all right.
yeah. So everybody, we are very excited to be here today. We have a special guest. We have Mr. David Gugick.
Yeah.
And I know I'm gonna butcher that again.
Don't push it. You can use green, which is what my dad used growing up for sales, because nobody could
Okay,
misinterpret green. Even our
there you
mailbox
go.
growing up said Gugick or Green. So you
Did
can
it
call me
really?
David Green.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like with me, with having a last name of Tomaszewski, of course, it's a bit of a mouthful there. My kids learn the alphabet at a very young age, just spelling our last name, which is kind of a little bit of a benefit. So, um, yeah, so today we are speaking about how MSPs can maximize profit and success with backup services. Of course, backup is a very critical aspect of managing our clients these days. And just if you give a little background about yourself with MSP 360, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with MSP 360 about 3.5 years now and have, in my opinion, been a part of some incredible growth, not only with our company, but with the MSP market itself. I mean, coming from enterprise software and running my own company before that for a long time, I just didn't know much about the MSP market, and I've just seen incredible growth. So it's kind of nice to be in a market that's growing like crazy, not only in terms of the number of MSPs and how quickly they're growing, but you can see all the merger and acquisition activity, all the venture capital and private equity going in,
Yeah, definitely.
companies
And
going.
exactly. And of course, like, we mentioned backup is such a critical service. It's something that's not optional. Selling backup doesn't need to
Public,
be a,
like Datto just had their IPO yesterday.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so it's definitely some big news. And I mean, I think that really will, further elevate managed services, our industry to the SMB and, mid market. So it's actually a very good thing for us. I'm pretty excited about that. So, with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you and
Right.
we'll kick things off.
All right. I'm going to try not to bore everybody. So let me go ahead and do my sharing. Oh, I can't share from my end.
There you go.
I think I'll have to enable. Okay, there we go.
You should be good right now.
Share my screen and I'll let you just tell me, Dan, whether or not you can see that PowerPoint.
Perfect. Yep. See it right there. Awesome.
All right. So, we can make this interactive. You're going to be watching like Facebook, listen to me. Like totally. You're watching Facebook. So if questions come in, just interrupt me and I will try to answer them. So I'm going to talk about, a few different things here, some in more detail than others, and talk, at least illustrate with a few examples about how our customers sell backup services. I'm trying not to make it too product focused, but I wanted to at least tell you just a little bit about the product later on, and then show you some examples about how our customers are selling. So let me just get control of my PowerPoint here. All right, so you are in the business of protecting your customers. You're in managed services, and most of the customers you're working with, at least the ones I run into, especially the smaller ones, really need managed services help. They are not in a position to hire the technical folks internally to manage their environments. And that's true even with a lot of larger companies. They may have internal IT people, but they just don't have the ability to manage everything that they want managed. So they reach out for assistance. And when you're selling, what I often see a lot, especially with smaller MSPs where there's owner operators there, technical folks who are running an MSP, sometimes I hear them talk about the services that they sell in a very technical way. So the first bit of information I want to convey is when you're talking about something like backup services, try not to get too technical. You can convey the importance of backup without really talking about, retention and different cloud environments and the technical details of backup, and talking about it more from an insurance perspective, right? And I think we all know how that has changed over the last few years. I can tell you that I mentioned earlier that I've been with MSP 360 for in April, it'll be 4 years. And when I came aboard, I would talk to customers a lot about backup, and they would tell me, yep, that's an optional service. We want everybody to have it, but we don't sell it to everyone. And I think, the number of MSPs that were selling backup services, or to what percentage of their customers they were selling to, went from with our discussions, from 65% to 95% in those 3 years. And I kind of feel like, I mentioned it at the last bullet on this page, that really now, like Dan said, it's a required service. It's up there with RMM and antivirus, anti-malware type software. It's insurance for your customers to protect them against not only accidental things like deleting a folder or a file, but malicious things like ransomware. And not only does it protect your customers, it also protects you, which is just as important. And I'm gonna give you just a little example I've been telling customers in some presentations for the past year. There is a local dentist office, and I'm in the Wilmington, Delaware area, and a good friend of mine is a dental hygienist. And she called me up one day, this is about 1.5 years ago, and was telling me that they can't access any of their patient files. There's this message on the screen. It says blah, blah, blah. It was clearly that they were hit by ransomware. And this particular dentist office had an MSP who offered them backup services. And for whatever reason, the customer declined and the MSP allowed that to happen. And sometimes you have to allow it because you might need a customer, even though they are saying that they don't want something. And after being down for 2 days and paying the ransom and being lucky enough to actually pay the ransom and get their data back, the MSP figured now they'll be able to sell some backup services. But what inevitably happened is they fired the MSP. And that's not unusual. You as an MSP are hired to manage and protect customers. And when something happens, even if it's the fault of the customer, it can really work against the MSP. And they went out and they hired somebody else. So what I tell a lot of customers now is make it required. And if you really do have a customer that's adamant that they're just not paying for it, and we'll talk more later about pricing and whether or not you're priced properly. But if you feel like you are priced properly and the customer is declining backup services, then you at that point have two choices. You can either tell them, well, then you can't be my customer. And I hear a lot of MSPs say that today. If you don't want the basics of protection, then we are not the MSP for you, because we can't protect you unless you have these set of services. Or you can go ahead, and sometimes you have to make a financial decision to go ahead with a customer that's not buying everything you want, even if it's in their best interest and even yours. What some MSPs, though, and I think it's a good idea to consider, is they talk to their lawyers and they draft a sort of not a contract, but an acknowledgement from the customer that's signed that you're declining a tier 1, a really important service that we recommend you have, and the risk to you is great if you don't have it. That sometimes can put the customer on notice that they're declining something that's so important, you're willing to get them to sign away, whatever it is, liability or just acknowledgement, the fact that they're declining something. So do everything you can to try to get them to buy insurance, which is what backup is. Also, you need to understand not only their business that they're in, but their retention needs, their restore time objectives. Things like your restore time objectives will go a long way to helping you figure out what kind of software you need. Do you need business continuity software on the servers because they only can be down for an hour or two? Or do you need other types of software that can protect the server itself, but will take 6 hours as an example to get back up and running? How much retention do they need? Are they in a financial market where they're going to have to keep 7 years worth of data, or are they at a position to keep less? That might give you an idea about where you're going to have to move that data, what type of cloud storage features that we'll talk about later you'll have to take advantage of, potentially which cloud storage vendors you decide to work with. So understanding all of that, I think the takeaway is make sure that all of your customers have backup. Now, you might have customers out there that have been with you for years that don't have backup. It's a good opportunity for you to go back and try to talk to them about a missing service. And you can certainly illustrate it with scare tactics. That can go a long way to, helping a customer. I would say that talking about it from an insurance perspective can also help as well. So,
and it
make
really
sure
is
that
amazing.
they understand. What was that?
I'm sorry. I was saying, you brought up, the recovery time objective, RTO, and, as well as, recovery point objective, RPO.
Yes.
I tell you, it really changes the dynamic of the conversation with the client when you bring those two things up, because, they think backup is backup, right? There's so many variables. And once you, talk about RTO and RPO, all of a sudden you see the wheel spinning in their head, and they really start to think about, what do I really need? What is the best fit for my organization? And while nothing is a cure-all, if there is an issue, if something were to happen where you do have to recover from a backup, having had that conversation, there aren't any surprises then, because you've addressed those objectives up front, versus when you do have to recover, and then all of a sudden you're not able to go as far, or as current as you would like, or it's going to take longer than you anticipated. It really changes those dynamics.
Exactly. So when you're talking to your customers, you're not going to say RPO and RTO. You're never going to say those acronyms.
Right.
You're going to ask them, how much data can you lose without it impacting your business in a great way? Obviously, they may not understand it and say, well, no data. And then you'll say, well, if there was some kind of outage or a server was destroyed in a lightning strike, how much data could you lose, with the understanding that you would have to re-enter that amount of data before it affects your business? And if they say 15 minutes for the purposes of, say, like a Microsoft SQL Server database, then you know that you're going to have to be backing that up every 15 minutes, right? To minimize the amount of possible data loss. Then you'd ask them, how long can you be down before the system is back up and running? And that's going to be different for databases. It's going to be different for servers. It's going to be different for endpoints, where maybe they can be down because they have other endpoints available. But whatever those answers are, and you should document them, and it should be a part of your onboarding process, getting a full understanding of all that information. That will help you to figure out what kind of products you're going to need to really solve those to really meet those customer needs, I should say.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
So we have Marco Hug. He has sent us a message saying, greetings from the Swiss mountains. So thank you for that, Marco. And his question is, most interested parties answer. So he says, I have data in iCloud, OneDrive, or in Dropbox. I don't need data backup. How do you solve this challenge?
Well, I mean, it sounds more like replication rather than backup. If you have your data in iCloud, it's basically just an instance of your pictures. So for personal use, maybe that's fine. Maybe you don't want to keep copies of your data even locally with, your iPhone, and you're happy having Apple store everything in iCloud. But if they have an outage or they lose data, you're going to lose your pictures, period, because you have no backup. Now, that backup for you on a consumer level might just mean, well, I want to keep everything locally as well. And maybe as a consumer, that's fine. For businesses, that's not really the same thing, right? You edit PowerPoints and Word documents and create contracts, and things are changing. Things are getting deleted. Things are being created. Some things are being overwritten. Some type of ransomware might be deleting all your files, renaming them and encrypting them. If you want to get that stuff back and you're just replicating up into the cloud, then inevitably what you are going to get is replication of what's in the cloud. So the iCloud example would be, if you probably deleted everything locally on your computer and added new files to it, which could be just encrypted versions of all of your pictures you took with your iPhone, then inevitably what you would have up on iCloud is just a bunch of encrypted data. So replication is not backup. That's the general answer that we get when we hear people talking about just kind of like copies of data. Plus, you can not restore old versions of stuff usually. So for businesses, they may have a need to restore last week's PowerPoint presentation or restore a database because they're in a lawsuit and they need to know what documents or what a database looked like at a specific date. And so you're going to be dealing with customers who might have 7-year retention periods, 180-day retention periods, as they might want to keep 10 different versions of files and documents so they can roll back to old versions. That's really about the management of backup. I guess that's the best way I can answer that.
Excellent.
All right, so I wanted to do some polls, and since I wasn't sure they would come through on Facebook, I just put them on a page. So what do you think, Dan? I thought maybe having everybody use the chat window in Zoom or the Facebook live feed if they want.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
I can actually,
if you're on Zoom right now, maybe what you could do is just click that more option up in your toolbar and chat, and make sure that your chat is going to all panelists and attendees, not just all panelists. Otherwise, your fellow attendees will not be able to see. If you're in Facebook, go ahead, just type in the Facebook feed, the live feed for comments. I just wanted to get a quick sense of when you currently sell backup services. Are they required or optional? Or maybe as the third answer, you're just not selling them ... yet, but we know you will soon. So I think if you could go ahead and just type that in, I'll let Dan kind of look over the answers as I move forward here. So we don't hold up the presentation. And you can interrupt me whenever, Dan.
Okay.
All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about numbers. Now, I'm going to talk at a very high level, and I'm going to provide some links later on about some webinars I've done in the past with people that are much more versed in the financial side of things to understand better, what kind of margins you should be making. But I wanted to pull out a few metrics from a recent webinar we did. In order to understand what you need to sell things for, you probably, unless you really love accounting, and some people do, but I know a lot of people don't. They may outsource the accounting with somebody. You may need help looking at things like your profit and loss, your P&L, to understand where the money's going out and where it's coming in, what's generating money, what things are costing you versus what you're selling them for, your profit margins on things like services versus your overall, net profit that you're making with the business. These are all things that are going to be important. So I'll just say the details really are everything. If you don't know the details of your business, you are never going to be able to get things priced correctly. And you could be leaving a lot of money on the table, or possibly you might be overcharging for things that you really shouldn't be, and you might be losing out on competitive deals. So should always try to make as much money as possible. Obviously, you're in the business of making money, but you don't want to overcharge. You don't want to put yourself out of a competitive deal. You want to be fair to your customers. So some of the metrics that I pulled out, which I think are sort of important, just to talk about on very quickly on the slide, is your gross profit margin, product margins. These are how much you're going to have to make on average with the products you're reselling. And that should be around 65%. The range is usually around 50 to 65. Now that's an aggregate. That doesn't mean that, if you sell MSP 360, you should only make 65%. You might make 200% with us, and you might make 40% with somebody else. The important point is that you're able to generate enough profit, to get to that level. So your services generally are going to probably be 65 to 85% of your total revenue. Obviously, your results, your mileage may vary, as they sometimes say. So you may be doing a lot of project-based work as opposed to services. Maybe you're migrating from break fix, or you're still doing a ton of break fix and you get a ton of business that way. So take all these numbers with a grain of salt. All I want you to do is I want you to be successful at whatever you're selling. So if you're primarily in the services industry, then you probably are going to be looking at 65 to 85% of your total revenue coming in from the services you're reselling. Salaries for the people that you're hiring, the techs, the support people who are managing all of the services for you, probably should max out at about 40% of your total services revenue. And then ideally at the end of the year, when you've tallied all the numbers, you should be making 25%, because you need money to reinvest in the company. You need money to put in the bank. That's important. Separate from the salaries that you're pulling in, a lot of MSPs are subchapter S corps in this country anyway, or, limited liability corporations. So there's money to be made. There may be profit that is generated outside of salaries that, you want to take home or reinvest in the business. And so you should be looking at about 25%. Now, if you can't make the needed profit with your services, maybe you need to relook at what you're offering. It's quite possible that the products you've selected are just too expensive, or you need an additional product in there to supplement. Now, if you're paying too much for your products, right, then it's a good time to probably look at negotiating. I do talk to customers occasionally that say, oh, we have this great legacy deal with this particular vendor, and they are great deals. So don't get rid of a great deal if the software is working for you. But also understand that when you're talking to companies who are providing services that you can resell, it's always a good idea to try to negotiate. And sometimes that negotiation can be with a commitment. It could be, with a commitment to planned growth. It could be a commitment to time. It never hurts to ask to try to get a little bit of a better rate if you're unable to meet the levels you need to meet with respect to marking up the services to generate the profit you need with your customers. So like I said earlier, I will provide some detail and some other webinars you can look at that we've done in the past that will provide a lot more contextual information around this and provide a lot more numbers and described by people who kind of do this for a living for MSPs.
I just wanted to throw out.
So I see that there's some chat information. Do you see anything in the chat, Dan, that you want to discuss?
Yeah, I think the one thing is, I think we have a lot of shy people out there, but because we only got a few people that had commented, but 75% do say that it's required, and 25% are saying that it's optional. And
okay.
Yeah, and
I'd be curious to know if anybody wants to type it in the comments as we move on. For those that sell it optionally, what percentage of customers are buying it?
Good question.
So, yeah. What's your close rate, even though you don't require it? That's a good thing to know as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me talk, before I go into some examples about how our customers actually sell services and give you some ideas about how you might package up backup services with your customers, I wanted to tell you just very quickly, one slide just about what we offer. At MSP 360, we designed backup services for the MSP market from the ground up for MSPs. Back in 2011, I think is when the product first came out. We wanted to be able to offer you a product that was low cost from us, so you could offer it not only at competitive prices to your customers, but also generate significant profit. So how do we do that? Well, we did that by decoupling expensive private cloud storage from the product and instead integrating in, and I'll talk about the cloud a little bit more on the next slide in general, by integrating with all the public cloud storage vendors. Now, I've heard the 3-2-1 backup principle a lot. I've heard it even in my previous life in enterprise software, where I did backup and disaster recovery on the enterprise side. I hear it a lot on the MSP world because the concept is important as it is old. 3-2-1 just means that you should be keeping 3 copies of your customer data and your data as well, because you should be backing up as well. That means the live data and 2 backup copies. So 3 is 3 in the 3-2-1 is 3 copies. 2 is 2 backup copies. The 1 in 3-2-1 is one of those backup copies should be offsite. Traditionally, that might have been backing up to tape and hiring some company to come pick up those tapes every night and ship them off to a mountain somewhere where they were secure. And then if you needed to do a restore, call them up, they'll pick up the tapes, deliver them the next day, and you could do a restore. These days, it's the public cloud, and we'll talk more about the public cloud. So we provide a lot of flexibility when it comes to the public cloud, but what we can do is back up everything that you need, your Windows, your Linux, your Mac, endpoints and servers. We do file folder as well as image-based backup. We can also back up applications, Microsoft SQL Server and Exchange, as well as hosted applications, Office 365 and Google G Suite. and virtual, Hyper-V and VMware. So we do pretty much everything all of our customers need in terms of backup. I mean, we don't back up for backup's sake. We back up so we can restore. So a pretty flexible restores. Even if you're doing image-based backups, you can pick files to restore out of that without restoring the entire system. If you're doing file folder, you can restore from a date and time or a date range. You can restore specific versions. You can restore entire folders. You can even restore things like NTFS permissions. If you're restoring to a server or an endpoint with permissions, you don't want to have to reapply them after a restore. So there's a lot of flexibility there, bare metal, restoring to virtual, restoring to the cloud, and when in terms of image-based backup. So a lot of options there that we let you manage centrally from our thin client management interface with two-factor authentication and all the security implementations that you as an MSP would find important. That means encrypting your customer data with AES 256-bit encryption, sending the data directly from your customers' endpoints and servers directly to your cloud storage. And I'll just mention that if you happen to have a customer that it maybe is larger and works with their own cloud, maybe they have an arrangement and a relationship with AWS, Amazon's cloud, and they want their backup there and they have their own accounts, you can use their own accounts. You can integrate any number of cloud storage accounts, whether they're yours or your customers specifically. So we wrap up all the data with TLS SSL encryption over the wire. It's pre-encrypted before it's even sent over the wire. It's encrypted in the cloud as well. So pretty good way to protect all of your customer data. Now we do use the public cloud, and the public cloud is how we've lowered the price of the product. So by not having to run our own private data center or co-locate it in somebody else's data center, pay for it, and then charge you as the MSP, who is essentially a reseller. That's what you do. You resell services as a part of your business to your customers, having to mark up expensive private cloud storage to make money on it, and then charging your customers an arm and a leg. That might go a long way for them not wanting to buy services. So we integrate directly with Amazon S3, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, Wasabi, and Backblaze B2, as well as S3 compatible. So you buy your storage directly from the cloud storage vendors, and that way you can tailor your offerings for customers of any size and need. But because you're buying at such a low price, you can mark it up appropriately without overcharging your customers and still generating significant profit. So the great thing about the cloud, and I do recall, like when I first got to the company, we would have to talk to customers about the cloud and allay any concerns they had about security and uptime. And one of the great things about public cloud storage is it's low cost because they buy, because economies of scale, because they're buying 10,000s, hundreds of thousands of drives that are managed with a handful of support folks. They're buying big data centers. They are sometimes using green energy to power them so they don't have to pull electric off the grid. They are scalable, which means in the old days, if you were running your own data center, you had to know how you were growing, what your capacity use was this year, how fast you were growing, so you knew what to expect next year. So you could buy new drive cabinets, maybe new servers, new drives in advance, and prepare for that growth. You don't have to worry about that. Now, you should know how quickly you're growing, but you don't have to worry about how fast it is or if you have a sudden spurt in growth, because any of these public cloud storage vendors can accommodate that growth. And then we talk about, most cloud vendors will talk about durability and availability. Durability means just the likelihood that your data is going to get destroyed permanently. And availability is just really the downtime of the service, usually measured in the number of nines. So you might see 9 nines or 11 nines. Statistically, the numbers are so low that your data will ever be destroyed and that you would lose. It's certainly a lot lower than what it would be if you ran your own data center. So the public cloud is a great place to buy storage. It's very inexpensive, comparatively speaking, to running your own data center usually. Now, some of you may have your own data centers and you want to continue to run them, and that's great. Just know that the public cloud is available should you ever decide to, get your feet wet or start to move certain customers into the cloud.
I tell you, the flexibility,
yeah.
The flexibility that you guys offer with having, the ability to select from a variety of, vendors for that cloud storage is awesome. And I can imagine that is a pretty significant attraction for the MSPs that you're bringing on board.
Yeah, it's an attraction that sometimes provides a little bit of stress to the MSP. So I don't want anybody to think, you know what, now we're putting you in charge of making yet another decision. You've gone through and you've evaluated software, and then you decide on MSP 360, and now you're going to stress about where to put your data. All of the public cloud storage vendors can store your data safely. And if you talk to an account manager or your solution architect here, they can help you figure it out based on your particular need. But also remember that if you have customers that are, say you're dealing with a lot of mom and pop shops, and they are very cost conscious, and you want to make sure whatever you're providing to them, you're buying at the lowest possible price. Consider using somebody like a Wasabi or Backblaze B2, where you're going to spend $5 to $6 a month per terabyte of storage. That's, about a half a cent per gigabyte cost to you, which is very low. You can mark that up appropriately for those customers. But if you have other customers that maybe need some of the more advanced features of something like an AWS, maybe they're running virtual instances inside of EC2, and you would prefer to use AWS, maybe because it has multiple regions. It's available in multiple countries if you're an international MSP. Go ahead and use AWS as well. You don't have to pick just one cloud. You can open up any number of accounts you want with any of them, and then tailor your services for customers that are appropriate for that particular storage.
Perfect.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about pricing. How do you price backup? You want to sell it right? What are your options? Yeah, it's another decision, just like selling any services, how much you're going to mark them up, and with backup, how you're going to sell them. So we see our customers using a few different bundling up backup a few different ways. And I'm going to show you an example of the three major ways. And then I'm probably going to throw up another poll and kind of find out if you're selling backup, how you're currently doing it. One way is just to sell per gigabyte or per terabyte. Usually it's just on a per gigabyte charge. So you're not at that with this type of pricing, you're not going to charge your customers for the agents. You're just going to roll them out. There will be a cost to you. But the idea is that based on what you're charging for storage, that will more than compensate for the agent costs. So you're just charging your customers based on how much they're storing. How much are they going to store? Well, that's probably going to be dependent on how much data they need to keep and for how long they need to keep it and the type of data you're backing up. So when you do your onboarding with your customers or your original interviews, you're going to have a pretty good idea. Ooh, they have 2 terabytes of SQL Server databases. They have endpoints that have about 30 terabytes worth of endpoint data. They have 75, terabytes of server data. They need to keep this data for 180 days. And you can do some calculations and sort of estimate about how much data is going to be up there to understand probably how many gigabytes they're going to be using and what might be an appropriate rate to charge those customers. The other option is sort of a per device where you build it into your endpoint or server pricing. So if you're selling endpoint protection as a required service, and maybe you're charging your customers, let's say $35 a month for endpoint protection, and maybe that includes RMM, antivirus, anti-malware, and backup. And you want to make sure that your solution, whatever you're picking, let's say MSP 360 in this case, fits into that $35 nicely based on the amount of data you're backing up. And maybe for servers, and I'll show you another example, you're charging a lot more, obviously, because server management is much more expensive. And you just want to build it in that way. That's the other way to do it. And then really the third way is a hybrid approach where you're selling your customers backup services at a price, say $20 a month for server backup. And maybe that includes 250 gigabytes of storage. And then anything above that, you'd be charging them, say, a per gigabyte rate. So there is no one size fits all. You can sell it different ways to different customers if you want, based on their needs or based on what you think would be most appropriate for them. And don't assume, it's always a good idea to share. And I'm going to ask on the next slide to do another poll about how you're currently selling it now. So let's go over there now. But don't assume it's just because another MSP sells it in a specific way that is the right solution for you. You have a lot of options out there. And so sell it what's the most appropriate way. So if anybody could just hit up the chat in Facebook or on your Zoom chat and let us know if you're selling it per gigabyte, if you're selling it per device flat rate, or you're using some type of hybrid approach, or maybe you're doing it a different way. So if you are doing something different, just type different. And if you want to share with everybody what you're doing, get that entered. And we can share as we move on, as I move through the different examples. Now, these examples are related to our pricing, obviously, but obviously you can do the same thing with any product that you're selling to understand what the costs are going to be. The costs are going to be different, but just it's important to do your homework, understand what you're going to be spending so you can understand what you should be charging and what kind of margins you have available. So this first example is about a la carte pricing. A la carte pricing just means you're selling customers storage per gigabyte. Now, this is an actual customer of ours. They have 750 endpoints and servers. I think the breakdown is about 650 endpoints to 100 servers, I think, if I remember correctly. Currently, our licensing doesn't differentiate between endpoints and servers. We charge the same thing. So after discount, I think we're $6 a month list price, but after discount, they're paying us about $3.78 a month for the licenses. That's our cost. They are backing up in total 157 terabytes worth of data, and they're backing it up to Amazon S3, which has a lot of great features. It is a great service, but it's also a little more expensive than some of the smaller players like Backblaze and Wasabi. So they charge $23 a terabyte, or about 2.3 cents per gigabyte on average. And they have decided, this MSP sells back up to their customers at 12 cents a gigabyte. So substantial markup over 2.3 cents, but that needs to absorb the licensing cost. So on average, what they're paying for licenses from MSP 360 and the storage cost from Amazon is about $6,400 a month. And based on that, a number of storage and what they're charging at 12 cents per gigabyte, they are generating almost $19,000 in profit. So they're making almost 3 times what they're spending. So there's some great margins available there.
It's
That's
pretty
the a la
significant
carte pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is significant. Now, you don't have to sell for, now I'll go back real quickly. You don't have to sell for 12 cents a gigabyte. If that's going to price you out, consider lowering the cost and just run the numbers again. I mean, if your goal is to make, say, 65% on all the services you're selling overall, if that ends up being the number for you, according to your accountant or your financial advisor, then you have a lot of margin to work with here. So if you sold it at 6 cents, which is half that, you would be, generating about, almost $10,000, about $9,500 in profit. So you would still be making, not as much, maybe 50%. So not quite 65%, but maybe you're selling something else. So there's a lot of margin available there to sell your backup. Now, if you're using something like a hybrid approach, and I just applied this is now a fictional example. So I just decided to say, what if that previous customer who was real was selling a hybrid approach, same number of backups, but instead of AWS, they're going to Backblaze B2. Backblaze B2 charges $5 a month per terabyte, so pretty low cost. And they've decided to charge their customers $10 for backup for endpoints that include 100 gigabytes free, and $25 per server with 200 gigabytes free. And when they tally all of the free up and they subtract it from the number of terabytes that they're backing up, there is an overage. And they are charging 10 cents per gigabyte, so lower than what they were charging in the previous real example. Now, in this example, their out-of-pocket costs, because they're going to Backblaze, which is less expensive than AWS, their out-of-pocket cost each month is about $3,600. But they're generating $15,600 in profit, fictionally, not a real example, but that's what they would be. Certainly, they can lower the storage costs there to 7 cents, 6 cents, 5 cents, and probably still generate significant profit. But always run your numbers. The last example is really a fixed price example. This is another real customer of ours. So they have 150 endpoints and 100 servers. And again, they are only spending $378 a month per license. And they are selling a backup as a required service with their endpoint and server management. And they are selling endpoint management at $35 a month, server management at $125 a month. That's for antivirus, anti-malware, RMM, and backup. They're using Wasabi, which costs them about $6 a month per terabyte. So this doesn't show you the profit margins here, but it just goes to show you what their cost is based on what they're charging. So let's look at their endpoint costs first. On average, they are spending about $4.50 a month to back up the endpoints. So if you take that out, if you remove that from the $35, it leaves a little over $30 a month to cover the RMM and antivirus, anti-malware. And for most folks that I talk to, they negotiate pretty good prices for those services. So they're generally a few bucks each. You might be paying a little bit more, but that does leave a significant amount of profit. Now, that's separate from any, tailored services that you would be doing for these customers, like restore services or things like that, or setting up new endpoints, all that kind of stuff you'd be billing for probably. But just on the backup side, we wanted to show you that only about $450 of that is coming off the top. On the server side, where they're backing up, significantly more data, their out-of-pocket cost is about $850 a month. So you can remove that from the $125, and it leaves almost $117. And that once you remove the RMM and antivirus from that, it's leaving a significant amount of profit each month for you, the MSP, on top of whatever else you might be making to manage those servers if they need something like a restore. No, there's not just 3 models. Somebody's asking on the chat if there's just 3 models. No, you can sell backup any way you want. I mean, I don't know what the other ways are offhand. If somebody wants to chime in, if they're selling at some type of hybrid approach, some people might sell, backup for a fixed cost, but not include any free storage and just add storage onto that. So that's sort of a variation on the hybrid theme. But generally speaking, there's a real poll coming up. Thanks, Dan. So do they see it on Facebook or no? I wasn't sure.
No, but I can add those in if for anybody.
That's all right. Let's folks answer, and then you can share it with everybody. So hybrid pricing in the lead. I wish I could do like a horse racing announcer talking really fast, like the guy in the old FedEx commercial from the 80s.
Yeah.
So hybrid pricing is leading right now. Fixed price. So hybrid pricing still in the lead. So I'll let you go ahead and answer that, and then I'll move on. I know we have 17 minutes left, so I'm happy to answer any questions, but let me just talk about from an MSP 360 perspective, what you can do next if you have interest in our product, or if you just want more information that we've created for the MSP community. So first, if anybody wants to find out more about our solution, is either interested in signing up for a free trial, which does not require a credit card, just sign up. In fact, if you haven't decided on a cloud storage vendor yet, that's fine. We will give you 2 gigabytes of space that you can use in AWS to play around with while you do your testing. But if you have a cloud storage vendor you're working with, or you just want to do local backups for testing, you can do that too. So you can sign up real quickly. But what I usually recommend to customers or folks that are interested is to sign up for a demo. Now, we do weekly demos, but it's better just to go to our landing page, which I'll show you in a second. And you'll be able to see it's very easy just to sign up for a demo. So let's see. The results of the poll are, well, hybrid pricing wins, sort of like 60, so 3-1, I guess, or 2-1. 2-1. 67% of the folks have hybrid pricing that answered, and 33% have fixed pricing. The nice thing about hybrid pricing is sort of guaranteeing you're going to make some money for backup services, even if they have endpoints that don't have a lot of data. Obviously, with the storage pricing, storage option only, if you have endpoints that just don't back up a lot because they don't have a lot of data on them, you won't be generating a lot of revenue. That's why it's important to understand what you're going to be backing up in advance. That can help you tailor a solution that's not only good for your customer, but also good for you. So we also have a remote desktop product that we've created. It's currently free for the next few months, and I think we're going to price it at like $5 a month per concurrent connection. So if you have 3 techs and they each need to be connected concurrently, it would be 3 licenses at $5 each. That's called our Managed Remote Desktop. You could try it now for the next few months at no cost. It's completely integrated into our service. So you can go into our remote management and kick off a remote session if needed. That's also available for anybody that wants to use it for sort of like home, very small business use. It's not integrated into our service, but it is available free on our website. And then I want to mention MSP University and some previous webinars we did. So I'm going to just pop over real quick to my browser window, just so I can show you a few things. So this is the landing page for MSP 360. If you want a free trial, just click on free trial. If you want to request a demo, just click on that. Somebody will reach out to you. tell them what kind of cloud you want to use or what your needs are, and they will tailor them most specifically for you. It doesn't take very long. MSP University is just a collection of MSP focused information that we created that's not really product focused. It's about how to sell, how to market, starting an MSP business, different types of backups. It's general information. We wanted to give back, just like Dan and everything MSP, want to give back to the MSP community. So this is a way for us to do that. We've spent our business in the MSP community and we've created a lot of good information. So we put it out there for anybody to enjoy. If you want to see previous webinars that we've done, and I've been doing a lot lately, they're available under our webinar link. And that, by the way, that is very easy to get to. If you just go to our resources at the top, you can click on MSP University for the MSP University stuff, or webinars for this information here. I did mention some financials and learning more about how to manage them and things I've done recently, since I'm not an expert. First one I'd recommend is this one I did over here with Taylor Business Group, with Dennis O'Connell from the Taylor Business Group. How maximizing profit with backup services. We went into a lot more detail, especially with the presentation part that Dennis worked on, the numbers. And if you hit up his website, which you can find links to for the Taylor Business Group at the end of the webinar, you can find even some presentations that he's done that is even more extensive than what we did together. So there's a lot of great information from him. We also hosted one recently with Nigel over at the Tech Tribe. He's in Australia. He does a great presentation on building pricing models for an MSP. And this was mostly me just starting it up and handing it off to him and having him go for, I don't know how long it was, I think a little bit over an hour. So you have this one that you can watch offline from Dan, but more information available on our webinars that we've done for you to enjoy. So definitely check them out if you want to. So, and yeah, go ahead.
So one question, Norm wants to know what happened to John Hall's face.
Who's John Hall?
It looked like he must have been one of the speakers on one of the on one of the webinars. Yeah,
he didn't want his picture. He's from. He was a customer who
That's awesome.
Just didn't want his picture out there. He just, some people just don't like to share their image.
Yeah.
So we use
the other question from one of our regulars that's on our calls every Wednesday and Friday is Alan Miller. He's asking, do you have any integration for billing backup utilization?
For billing, was that Dan? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I said so integration for billing.
So we integrate with Autotask and ConnectWise, plus we can generate billing reports that we can forward to the MSP by customer. So you'll have a good understanding, either forwarded to those products or exported from our product through the reports we can generate for you at the end of each month, exactly what every customer was using. And there's even options in there to price it out within there, so you can more or less generate an invoice if you need to.
Okay, excellent.
So there's a lot of great options in the product. And if you sign up for a demo, they'd be more than happy to show that to you. Either show you the integration if you're using one of those products that we integrate with, or showing you how you can generate that type of billing yourself from within the product.
Perfect. Yeah, and if anybody else has any other questions, please just go ahead and throw them into the chat, or if you're on Facebook, go ahead and throw your comment out there.
Yeah, I really didn't do a demo. We have full remote management from the backup perspective, so you can see, when new machines come online, associate them with the customer if needed, assign them licenses. We have full licensing management. Easiest way to manage is using a global pool of licenses. But if you have certain customers out there, possibly with like a tech person on site that you give some access to help you manage, maybe because the customer insists, maybe they have some IT people, maybe they're rolling out a product too much and that's increasing the licensing costs for your customer and they're not happy about it. You can restrict licenses by customer if needed. So there's a lot of licensing flexibility built into the product.
So let's talk about some best practices. So you have an organization that they've got a variety of desktops in their environment. They're, of course, in their environment, they're all joined to the domain, data sitting on the server, but you have some laptop users that do come into the office and connect, but a lot of times they're out in the field and may not always connect in, back into the server. So what are some of your recommendations in those environments?
I guess it depends on where your data is going. If they need to say be on a VPN in order to hit, local backup storage, then you're gonna have to wait for them to reconnect. But if they're backing up to the cloud, they don't need to be in the office at all. They can be doing backup. You can set up those backups to run, on demand, or you can do them scheduled if you want. So have them run at, say 4 p.m. Pick a time where you think those remote users will actually be online. More likely than not, you're not backing up a lot of data. I mean, most of these backups, especially for laptops, you're going to be doing file folder style backup. We only back up all the files that are needed the very first time. After that, we only back up files that changed or have been added. We can also do block level backups, which is just a fancy and overly complicated of way saying we can sort of dedupe individual files. So imagine you using Outlook and you're backing up large PST files that are maybe gigabytes big, but only change, say 10, 20 megabytes a day. We can back up just the changes within those files. So we can back up just the changes of the files, changes within the files, everything's compressed and then wrapped up in encryption. So the amount of data being sent over the wire is very low, and it's fully encrypted. So there isn't any worry that if your customer happens to be on a public access Wi-Fi, which they probably shouldn't be if they're not on the VPN, but we all know it may happen. That stuff is fully encrypted and will be sent up to the cloud, even though I wouldn't recommend going on unsecured Wi-Fi access points without a VPN ever. And you can certainly set up your VPNs to detect unsecured Wi-Fi and turn them on automatically. Even if they're on the VPN, the data would just go up to the cloud. Could even be backed up locally to the same disk if you want to be able to keep a copy of files locally for those endpoints. It's nice to have local backups as well as cloud-based backups. Local backups can be really fast to restore, especially if you're restoring a lot of data. Depends on bandwidth and type of broadband connections your customers have.
Excellent. So in that case, besides, your server backup, your licensing for that, you basically would look to those, laptop users that are not always in the office to, to have a license on that. And then you're doing file and folder for those individuals. And the beauty is the licensing is, it's inexpensive as well as, depending on what storage you go with. So, it's well worth, that associated cost.
Exactly. Now, we don't differentiate currently between desktops and servers. We do get some complaints from MSPs occasionally that they would rather have, different pricing, which probably would mean higher pricing for servers. That's something we may do next year. We'll see. It would probably mean that a desktop pricing is coming down. So, if you're concerned about that, you can lock in your pricing today. Should we ever introduce new pricing, you're not bound by the original pricing. You can always talk to your account manager and get the new pricing if it's more beneficial for you. So, but we currently don't charge any different. We charge a little bit more for like SQL Server. I think it's a couple of dollars more a month, 8 instead of 6, as I recall. For virtual machines, VMware and Hyper-V, where we're doing host level backups of the VMs, our licensing is by host. So I think it's, if I remember correctly, I think it's only $15 for a host. That's for 2 CPU sockets. If that's pretty low cost actually for virtual. And then we do Office 365 and G Suite. If you look in our buy button, if you sign up for a trial and click the buy button, you'll see that our list price for Office 365 and G Suite starts at $240 per user per month. That comes down actually pretty quickly after volume discounts. But I will point out that we're running some kind of promotion right now. I think it's only about 80 cents per user per month. So if you're doing Office 365 or G Suite and you end up talking to somebody at MSP 360, one of our account managers, mention to them, because I know we're actively pushing a special on Office 365 and G Suite for those customers.
How about notifications for backup success and failures? I'm sure that's all integrated, with the other vendors as well.
Yep. So we have, if you're using Autotask or ConnectWise, we can integrate with those services, pushed out help desk tickets automatically. Separate from that, if you're not within the product, we can do email notifications. So if you have like an RMM service that can monitor an email account, they can read that stuff coming in. We can also, you can also see that from the dashboard. If you come in to a dashboard, you'll see if there were any backup failures. Immediately, you can click on the backup history and see exactly what the problem was. You can also write out to the event log in Windows if you need to with backups, and it'll write out the backup status. So if you have some kind of log scanning tool installed that we can read the event logs and report off of that, you have that option as well. So there's a few different options. Make sure you just tell your account rep what you're using and that you would like a demo of that, and they can certainly show you how the notification integration works.
Perfect. How about for those that are out there, as we talked about today, driving opportunities for driving some new sales. What are you finding of MSPs using this as kind of a lead in to selling overall managed services?
Well, I will say talking about backup is, you can go down the rabbit hole and be too technical. So the idea that we're going to back up your stuff and protect you is probably a great thing to say under the umbrella of, we want to help you manage your IT environment. We want to make sure that your equipment's up and running, that you're running the latest patches on your operating systems and the applications you run, to make sure if you have a problem, we're on it and we can minimize any downtime, and also to protect you from mistakes that happen, right? Like opening a file you shouldn't, that gets through the antivirus, anti-malware, that a ransomware attack that can bring your business down. I think it's okay to talk about, the potential negative effects. Whether or not backup is the thing that's going to get you in the door, I doubt it, right? I think backup is hugely important, but it's mostly about protecting customers and managing their IT environment. I mean, I think we all know, separate from, managed services, what it's like managing the IT for our parents and relatives and maybe our kids. If you're a parent is managing their kids, you know how hard it is, and you know a lot about IT. You know how hard it is for those parents that don't know a lot about IT, about routers that can limit your kid's time, or using parental controls in iOS or Android to make sure that, your children are not going to sites they shouldn't and not online as longer than they should be. So it's hard to manage your environment. It's even harder for businesses. That's why I talked about at the beginning, small businesses are prime for needing managed services. I mean, if you're operating a small business out there, the likelihood that you don't have, an internet connection and software and hardware is pretty much zero these days.
Right.
There's something on site that's being managed. Point of sale systems, just computers to do scheduling, servers in the back managing software, playing music, Wi-Fi networks for customers that might be separate from, internal use, and then all the project-based work you have, running cable, installing new devices, putting storage cabinets in there, making sure that things are properly cooled, all the great stuff that you do related to the hardware and managing their entire IT environment. The idea that they're not going to need IT services is pretty much nothing. They do need them. Now, whether or not they want to pay for them or continue to have their nephew do the management, I guess is right. The hard part. You have to close that deal, right? So you have to convince them that what you provide is really important and will actually help them, right? We can provide all these services for you without getting too technical, right? Because if you get too technical, their eyes are just going to get glossed over and they are not going to understand anything you're saying, because that's what you probably have learned over the years. Technical people who talk technical to even friends will get a look like, shut up. We don't know what you're talking about, David. So, talk about the value. What you're going to provide. You're going to keep them up and running. You're going to keep them current on software patches. You're going to make sure if hardware fails that they know about it and you can replace it. You're going to be a phone call away for any kind of help that they need. And you're going to help manage the environment should something bad happen, whether that's a disgruntled employee deleting data, whether it's a hard drive failure on a server, whether it's somebody accidentally opening up a zip file and causing a ransomware attack, whatever it is, you are going to be there to not only get them up and running, but get them up and running fast. So minimize their downtime.
Excellent. And, and I always say it's not necessarily what we do, but it's what we do for them, right? So it's not the specifics, not the technical aspect, but it's the overall value to the business that we provide, right? So that peace of mind, ensuring that the data is protected in the event of a disaster, not going down into the, the nitty gritty of, we're installing this agent and this is how it's backing up and so on. So, I think
you don't ever have to talk about it. And that's exactly why we have a rebranding option. So you can even hide MSP 360. We don't need you to advertise us at your customers. You can lock down the agents, put them behind a master password so nobody can get to them, lock down the APIs so ransomware can't even do anything behind the scenes, and just make, the general screens have your company name, including the thin client management interface, because you're in the business of selling your services, your brand, right? Your brand doesn't have to be MSP 360 and the other vendors you use for antivirus and anti-malware and RMM. You don't have to advertise everything, right? You're providing a set of services, and those services may even change over time. It's not uncommon for MSPs to be using more than one backup solution. Most of the ones I talk to are using at least 2, sometimes 3. You may be using different antivirus and malware products depending on the type of customer and their need. They may change. You may change a vendor at some point. It's not even that important for your customers to know you're changing vendors, just that you're protecting them.
Very good. Looks like we've answered all the questions. David, I want to thank you very much for your time today. It was very insightful, and we got our thank you slide there. And
all right, I want to thank you for having us, for everything MSP, having us here. I hope I didn't bore everybody too much. I know some of the information was kind of, very high level, but I do encourage you to seek out some counsel from CPAs or financial advisors to help you understand things like your P&L, to make sure that you are charging the right things for your software and you're making the necessary profit so you can stay in business. I always say, you got to make money. You want to retire someday, you got to feed your dog, send your kids to college possibly. And college is expensive, as we all know.
Exactly.
So make what you can without overcharging your customers, evaluate software options you have, and just decide on what is the right fit for you as an MSP.
Very good. And anybody that's looking to see a demo, please go to the MSP 360 website, and you'll be able to schedule a demo. We will also be, in case you're have other people within your organization that weren't able to make it today, or if you have other MSP friends that are out there that you'd like to share this with, for everybody that's registered, you'll be receiving an email that will include a link to the replay of this. And so that will be coming out. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, on behalf of David and myself, we want to thank everybody for being here today. And we wish you a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Bye now.